Hi guys, it's Andy Lehman from freedomskillsacademy.com. I'm here today with another Life Bible extract. Again, remember, go to the website. There's a link below here. If you get yourself your own free copy of this book, it's yours. You only have to pay postage for it. It's a free physical 200-page book. So today I'm going to talk about something which may anger a lot of people. People may not like it. But it's about wealth and money can never be fair. Stop expecting it to be. Okay, so a lot of people don't like this because they're always calling out for the wealthy to pay more tax. And it's very easy to do because we live in a world where we have money which can eradicate lots of problems such as poverty and starvation. And that's because money is actually a tool. It is a tool that can end all these problems. It is a universal tool. It is incredibly handy, but it is just that. It is a tool, a concept. It was a concept that was created years ago to sort of get rid of the exchange system, because obviously when you were doing the exchange system, you could only a butcher could give meat to a carpenter in exchange for carpentry work. But if the butcher didn't need carpentry work, why would he need to pay the carpenter meat? And the carpenter who's starving, who basically needs bread, meat and milk, but he needs that food source. But when the butcher, the baker and the dairy farmer doesn't need any carpentry work, what's he going to do? And as society grew and things got more complicated, such as now we have like the hairdresser who basically is vegan, doesn't want to do a dairy farm, cut the hair of a long-haired dairy farmer because he doesn't want milk, or the lactose intolerant carpenter doesn't need milk, and there's so many different variations now. You couldn't do the exchange, so something had to be created to replace that, something that was uniform. So basically, a carpenter can work for the butcher, the baker and the dairy farmer and get paid for it whether he needed milk or not, or the butcher, he could sell meat to the carpenter without needing any carpentry work done. So it made everything easier. And money is a tool. That's all it is a concept. Now, I understand that people find it difficult to understand that while we have starvation, while we have all these problems around the world, and we have all this money, we do have this money that could eradicate all that. The fact is we haven't. And the reason we haven't is because it's down to us. It's human being. It's a fault of the humans. Wealth and money will never be fair until all human beings are at a higher form of consciousness and all singing from the same song sheet. We don't have that. What we need to do is stop trying to tell people to pay more tax and stop talking about wealth and fairness. We need to start educating people to become more compassionate, empathic, and work on that, because you're not going to get somebody to hand over their money that they've earned to someone who doesn't earn it. Because also, as much as we like to argue the fact, there is actually a principle behind this, and there's also not just principle, but there's actually a fact of systems. You see, we can argue as much as we want about wealth being fair and whatnot. A lot of it has been mismanaged by governments, because we do live in a wealthy nation. We should actually not have food banks. We shouldn't have starving children. It shouldn't be a question, but we do. And that is because we have unethical people doing things differently. Some people just don't want to help people. And then there's also the principle. Why should someone who has spent, let's say, 60-year-old millionaire who spent his life making certain decisions, we've talked about this in a previous video with cause and effect, and about everything that you do has an action. If someone has spent their life from, say, the age of sort of 18 or 20 doing specific things, they make a decision and choose to act a certain way. If they spent their money creating something or doing something, and they spent their time doing stuff that has resulted in the effect of wealth, they have been paid large amounts of money for the work that they've done, for the actions that they've taken, for the decisions they made. That is fair. What is not fair is that someone who doesn't want to work hard or doesn't invest their money on certain things, who doesn't choose to do certain things, expects that person to hand over his money to them. It's not fair. It cannot be fair. That's like having two children arguing over Lego. One child has 5,000 bricks, the other has 1,000 bricks. If you found two children arguing over Lego, you would try and stop them for being immature and stop them saying you can't have everything. They're his Lego bricks, not yours. You can't suddenly just expect someone to hand over an equal amount of Lego bricks to you just because you want them. They've got them because they probably spent their pocket money on it, whereas the other kid has spent his money on sweets. The other kid's parents has probably bought him Lego, where the other child's parents probably bought him let's say it was a train set he wanted. So he hasn't got Lego bricks because he chose something different. So you can't suddenly expect him to hand all his Lego over to that child just because that child wants it. And it's the same with wealth. Whether we like to accept it or not, wealth is just a concept. Money is just a tool. It is down to us human beings to be more ethical. We need to teach them. That's probably where the problem lies. So if you want to focus on that, focus on changing the world, change people. Don't try and suddenly expect wealthy people to pay more tax, because that is inherently wrong. Because, as I said before, you could have, let's use the example of stamps, which is in this book here. We've got the idea that, let's say you've got a 60-year-old man called Dave. He's been collecting stamps for 30 years. So from the age of sort of 30, collecting stamps, he's now got 100,000. Let's say you've got a 30-year-old called Steve. He's now started collecting stamps. He's been doing it for a year. He's got himself 5,000. He now looks at Dave and says, I want some of your stamps. And it's like, why? Why do you want some of my stamps? Well, you've got 100,000. It's not fair. I've got 5,000. Maybe I should have 20 or 30,000 of your stamps. Make it more equal. Make it more fair. And you'd be like, well, no, I've been doing this for 30 odd years. I've been collecting this. You've got a family. You're spending your money on your family, as you are, which is great. You're putting your spare money into buying stamps. I've not got a family. For the last 30 years, I've spent every spare penny of my money on stamps. This is the reward. This is the effect of my actions. This is from my causes. This is what I've got. Again, you could use this example with shoes. So you could have a woman who is in her 30s, has got X amount of pairs of shoes. You might have an 18-year-old who has one pair of shoes. She probably wants some of the other woman's stilettos or wants some of her shoes. That woman who's 30 doesn't go clubbing anymore. She doesn't, she probably, every spare penny she gets, she buys shoes. She's probably spent the first 5 years of her adult life working at university trying to get a decent job, and she's getting well paid, so she spends her money on shoes. The 18-year-old who's now going out pubbing and clubbing decides she wants some shoes and says it's not fair, you've got all those shoes. Let's say she's got 1,000 pairs of steel heels and stilettos, but she wants some. Is it fair that she should expect that woman to hand over all of her shoes or half of her shoes to this person who hasn't actually done anything towards it or isn't doing anything to buy the shoes? She's not making her chances of earning money better. She's not spending her money on it. She has a completely different lifestyle, a different outlook on life. Is it fair that she should hand the shoes over to her? The answer would be no. I know you're going to say no, because it's not. You try, if someone come up to you in your house and said, you've got, I don't know, five vases, I've only got one, let me have one. You'd be like, no, bugger off. I paid for this, I bought these, you can go and buy your own. We do it all the time, and we also try and teach children not to do the same thing. Yet when it comes to wealth and money, we all resort back to children, because we forget that money and wealth is just a concept. It is a tool, and it is based on cause and effect. The more money you have is probably because people have spent their time creating them systems. They put themselves in a position where they can reap certain rewards. What they've done with their money, they leverage their money. Lots of the wealthy people we know who haven't come from wealthy families. Let's take Warren Buffett and Roman Abramovich started the same as us. The difference is that they decided to use their money differently to their friends. And then they've got themselves into this position where they are billionaires. Now, we're expecting them to suddenly hand over their money to pay for everybody who's at a party and didn't want to do anything. They're partying now, they just didn't do it then. And we're saying you should hand over your money to us because it's only fair. It's not fair, it never has been fair. You can't say it's fair to take something off somebody else, whether it's shoes, stamps, hammers, food, whatever it is. You can't say it's fair to take it off someone just because it happens to be money. It's the same thing for everything. You can't take something off someone that they've worked hard to get just because it suits you. Now, people seem to attach right and wrong to wealth, or right and wrong to a certain financial number. And this is where the argument is with tax. Now, when it comes to paying tax, people seem to think millionaires should pay more tax. I'm here to tell you that they do. Even if they were paying the same rate, 5% or whatever rate, say 10% rate, whatever it is, they are still paying more money than a poor person. And a lot of people will say, no, they're not, they're paying the same. And I'll be like, no, they're paying the same tax rate. 10% of £100 is different to 10% of £100,000. People will say, no, it's not. It's the same. It's 10%. And they'll be saying they attach your values right and wrong. It's wrong that a wealthy person should pay 10% tax, and it's wrong that a poor person should pay 10% tax. They say it's right. A poor person should say 5%, and a wealthy person should pay 20%. They think that's right and wrong. It's not right and wrong. You can't have right and wrong determined by a numerical value. You can't judge a serial killer on the amount of bodies he's killed. If he's killed someone, whether it's 1 or 20 people, he's wrong. He may get multiple sentences for the murders he's done. Each case is taken into consideration, and he can be penalised for each murder. But a serial killer, or a person who's killed once compared to a serial killer, is still wrong. Yes, there are different degrees of probably motivation and reasoning. Some people may end up being in prison for killing for self-defence. Then there's a completely different argument there. But if someone goes out purposely to kill a person, whether they kill 1 or 20, they are still wrong. They're just as wrong as the other person. So you can't attach a numerical value to what is right and wrong. When it comes to tax, if a wealthy person is paying 10% and a poor person is paying 10%, the wealthy person will always still pay more. And this is where a lot of people say, no, it's not, it's the same. I say, no, that's the tax rate. The tax rate is the same, 10%. But the actual financial difference is astounding. So, let's have a look. Maybe a fairer system would be if we got rid of income tax and we just paid VAT on the things we use. That way, wealthy people always pay more because they generally use more and have more toys to play with. So, for example, let's say, let me try if I can find this from this book. All right. So, for example, if everyone paid 10% of their income, 10% of 1,000 is £100. 10% of 100,000 is £10,000. So £10,000 is more than £100. It always will be. It cannot be anything else. £10,000 is always higher, is always bigger than £100. So some people try to disagree and say that it isn't, but it's not. It's just the tax rate that's the same. So if you don't agree, let me ask you this: if I offered to give you £100 or £10,000, no questions asked, free money, which would you go for? Now, I'm assuming that you will go for the £10,000 because, it's more money, right? You'd be daft not to. If I was going to give you £10,000, no questions asked, free cash, didn't want it back, would you take that or would you take £100? I think I know what you're going to go with. Now, if you don't, you're either bad at maths or just very wholesome and a non-greedy person, which I respect immensely. If you are that wholesome person, you could have taken the £10,000, kept £100 for yourself, and then handed the rest to charities. They would have appreciated that. They could do a lot with £9,900. Remember, money is a tool. Okay, so now what if I offered you 10% of £100 or 10% of 100,000? Which would you go for then? Now, basically both, I'm offering you now the same rate, same tax rate, same percentage rate. So this is where people say that rich people are paying the same tax as poor people if they're paying the same rate. So if I offered you 10% of £100 or 10% of £100,000, then which would you go for? And I'm betting that you're going to go with the 10% of £100,000 because you'd be foolish to turn down the money. No one's going to say I'll have £100 instead of 10% of £100 instead of 10% of £100,000. So here's another example. So let's say that you were going out for drinks and you had two friends. Let's say there was Sid and Nancy. Sid had £10 in his pocket and Nancy had £100 in her pocket. Which one has the most money? If you said that Nancy, you'd be right because she has. It can't be anything more. Now, if they both gave you 10% of what they had, which one gave you the most money? And I'm more than certain that you're going to say that Nancy did. Probably because we're not talking about tax and wealthy people. That's where that's what really bugs me is how people change. Is that as soon as we're talking about tax and wealthy people, suddenly the right and the wrong is changing. It suddenly becomes dependent on a financial number, which is completely wrong. If you take away the tax and you're not talking about tax, you're not talking about wealthy people. If you had two friends and they gave you 10% of what they had, and as I said, one person has £100 in the pocket, the other one has 10, and the person who has £100 gives you 10% of what they've got, you're going to say that they gave you more money than the other person. Even if it's the same rate, you will say, because you'll always be. So there's no way that you can argue that £1 is the same as £10. You just can't. £10 is the 10% of £100 and £1 is the 10% of £10. There's no way that you're ever going to say that £1 is more than £10 or the same as £10. You can't. It just can't. So if I put a pound in your right hand and then I put £10 in your left hand, then I asked a complete stranger to point out which hand has the most money in it, they will point to your left hand holding the £10, because £10 will always be more than a pound. Okay? So, and that's all working on the 10%. So if 10%, so if a person is earning, let's say they're earning, $1,500 a month and they pay 10%, and then you've got a multimillionaire who's earning $150,000 a month, pounds a month, he's paying 10%, he will always pay more into the system. So you can't suddenly go saying that wealthy people should pay more and should pay more tax, because they do already. It's just not fair. It is fair that they pay all the same rate. Simple as that. The problem is, and I've always said this before, the problem is that we have governments and people who mismanage the money. The problem is that we know that money can do good, because it's a tool, it's a universal tool. It's one of those things that can get rid of starvation, poverty. It could even probably get rid of cancer, because you spend the money in research, you spend the money on machinery. You put the money into the NHS or the hospitals, then you can. But we don't. We live in a society where they will pay billions on nuclear weapons which we hope we'll never use. So they are spending billions on weapons we hope not to use as a deterrent. And if you've ever seen things, people like Hitler and stuff like that, if they're a madman, they don't care about their own people. They'll do whatever they need to do. So the chances are, it's probably better now to spend the money on. We could have eradicated lots of diseases. We could have kept people living long. We could have created a fairer, better society now by not spending the money on weapons. But we haven't. And so a lot of people turn to wealthy people, and because money's squirreled away, we think it's kind of wrong and inherently wrong, because that could help the world. Because we know it can help the world. That's the problem with money. Unlike shoes, stamps and Lego bricks, they can't be used universally to help change the world. So we see money as this magic tool, and because it's a magical tool, we believe then it should be controlled and not divvied out to loads of people. But again, that is just completely wrong, because we live in a world which by nature is always going to be 80-20. There's always going to be some people who will have more money. It's just the nature of the thing. 20% of the population will have 80% of the wealth. 20% of that 20% will always have 80% of that 80% of wealth, until the point where 20% happens just to be one person. 20% of the professional footballers, will earn 80% of the wealth in the industry. 20% of the UK traffic, 20% of the UK roads will hold 80% or will be regularly used by 80% of the traffic. There's always an 80-20, and it always will be with wealth. You can set yourself up to earn more, but it's a law of nature. We humans are the dominant species, but we are going to be, compared to ants, there's only 20% of animal species compared to, say, 80% is insect. Yeah, so there's going to be millions or billions more insects than there are humans. It's just how it is. The more intelligent we are, I guess there's going to be less of us. So the 80-20 rule is always going to be in place, and that will always govern a lot of wealth as well. And the other thing, like I said, when it comes to wealth, there are people who choose not to do certain things, and there are those who do. Roman Abramovich, when he was younger, decided to spend whatever spare money he had on buying shares, while his mates were buying whatever they were doing. They probably having a fun time going to the bar. I'm not saying Roman Abramovich didn't go to the bar, but he was spending his money on the shares. He started at the oil field with his mates. He went to the same oil field, wore the overalls, but eventually over time he ended up with owning enough shares to buy the whole business out, or he actually became the owner of the company that he started working for. So you imagine turning up one day and finding that the bloke you've been working with from school, you left school together, he was in overalls the day before, now he's walking in a suit, he's now your boss. That happened because they made different decisions. So is it fair that those who spent their spare rubles on vodka and food for the last 5 years should suddenly expect Roman Abramovich to give him his money because he decided not to spend it on that and decided that he was going to spend it on shares? Why is it fair that he should give his money up for that? Obviously, it's nice if he does pay more tax. It'd be nice if he did donate to certain charities. Another thing is, I think a lot of wealthy people would actually pay more to charities if they had less tax to pay. A lot of it is actually, I know for well that if I was incredibly wealthy, I would pay less tax because I don't believe in what the government spends the money on. I would rather give it to charities than give it to a government that spends it on weaponry that is going to be sold to Yemen or Saudi Arabia, or it's going to be used, they're going to build nuclear bombs that they're never going to use. So as a personal decision, I would rather pay less tax to the government and donate it to charities. I certainly wouldn't want to pay any more tax than I had to a society which, in many ways, where lots of people aren't helping themselves. I would like to make that decision, okay? Because it is, wealth is not fair. It's down to the individual person. Warren Buffett was exactly the same. He's obviously one of the wealthiest people in the world. He's a billionaire. And when he was young, he decided that majority of his wages was going on rent and food, so living costs. And what he had spare, he decided he didn't see the logic in trying to buy the latest new T-Bird car on hire purchase like his friends were, just to please women. When as soon as you roll the car out of the forecourt, its value dropped. And every time you keep that car, its value goes down. Every time you use it, it's getting wear and tear, so the value would go down. And then there would be the insurances to cost, and then there would be the actual running cost of the car. So everything that he would be spending on that car was just going down. So he realised that he was going to trap himself in a situation where he had to work, to earn, to live. He decided he didn't want that. So he would basically go for the cheapest car possible. He didn't go for the hire purchase, paying interest, because with hire purchase, you're obviously paying interest on the car. So if the car at that time was worth $500, by the time you finish, you're probably paying $700 for a car, which by the time you finish off paying is probably only worth $300. So you've lost money. You've not only just lost money, you've lost twice as much money, so to speak. So he decided that he would just buy the box standard car, and every piece of spare money he had, he went on to buying stocks and shares. So which has now basically been rewarded with all this wealth. So his actions, he created those effects to his life. What he decided, he'd wake up every morning, every day, he decided, I'm going to look at the stocks and shares. He bought this, he bought that, he would sell this, he would sell that. He did certain things that generated that wealth, and that's what he's been rewarded with. So why should he be taxed more to pay for people who haven't made them same decisions? Now, again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't help people. I'm not a Tory. I am a sort of a half capitalist. I'm a capitalist with compassion, I think the word is. Kind of half socialist, I believe that everyone has the right to make money. I believe in society. I believe that everyone has the right to make money and they have the right to decide what they do with that money. I don't believe necessarily with forcing taxation on certain people because of the decisions that they've made. And that is basically it. I mean, there's certain taxes I think are completely wrong, and that affects even the poor people. You inherit a house that your parents have bought and that they have paid taxes on. They've paid taxes on their income. They pay taxes on the property. They've paid the house off, and then when they die, they leave it to their children, like all good parents want to do, give them help, whatever. And then you're kind of hit with this inheritance tax if it's over a certain price. I think that's wrong. It doesn't matter whether it's whether it's just a middle-class family with a £250,000 house, or whether it's a family whose basically parents had a £30 million house. It's not right that you should have to pay an inheritance tax on a lump sum of money that is already being taxed already. Okay, so I'm not particularly a Tory. I'm not particularly a raging socialist, because money, I know, is just a tool, and wealth is just a concept. It's just something to help society. It's society that needs changing, and I certainly don't believe that you should force wealthy people to pay more tax, because they do. They simply do. The mathematics shows that if someone pays 10% of their income, if they're earning £2,000 a month and someone's earning £200,000 a month, 10% is always going to be more of the £200,000. It's what the government and other people do with it. Obviously, I know that there are sneaky tricks that wealthy people do to hold on to their money. And again, I'm not necessarily saying this is a bad thing, because, it's not like they've just been suddenly given £200,000 or £200 million and then, you expect them to share it. These people have done stuff to create that wealth. There are systems in place. We've talked about before in other videos. If you go up to someone, you don't know that they're a stranger, and you say you're a bit of a whatever, you run the risk of getting slapped. Why do you run the risk of getting slapped? Because you made a specific choice and you said a specific set of words that you knew was going to offend someone. So you did something and you knew what the desired result would be. Wealthy people have spent their time doing certain things, knowing that there was a desired result that could happen. They created systems, they spent their money on doing things that other people didn't. They worked towards creating that wealth. They knew that there was a big opportunity or big possibility that it would pay off and they would make that money. They didn't do it to piss you off. They didn't do it to steal your. They're not stealing your money. They just set up systems that has generated that. You could do exactly the same if you choose to, but I'm not saying you choose to or you don't choose to, but lots of people don't. And then they suddenly expect they should pay more money to pay for their lifestyle. No, because like I said, everyone's lifestyle is different. There are people who don't have money because of the decisions they made. There are lots of unfortunate people who are in positions which are struggling because of society. But again, Tories often get slandered for this, and I can understand why. Because again, you've got to be careful. You don't paint everyone in the wrong. Paint all the same people with the same brush or whatever. But there are people who make their own situations worse by doing certain things. As Einstein said, it is crazy to keep doing the same thing but expect different results. If you want more money, but you come home from work and then once you've got any spare money, you pop to the pub or get takeaway and stuff like that, because obviously you've got to live, and life is precious. You've got to enjoy it, and we all enjoy food and drink. But if that's what you do, and you're not putting any aside or working on anything to help you get out of that system, then you're making your own problems worse. And then why should somebody else bail you out? It's what wealthy people have done, you can do yourself. Now again, like I said, and I keep saying this in every video, it's not necessarily easy. Everyone is different. Everyone has different energy levels. Some people have better backgrounds. They don't have certain situations, certain problems, as we know full well. Being a white guy with white privilege, I've not had half the issues that other people have. For innocent people have had for no apparent reason. So people have their own trials and tribulations and things to deal with, and it's not easy. And not everybody is equal. I get that. I understand that, but that doesn't mean that you can't make certain decisions to better your situation. You just need to be mindful. You need to understand the cause of law and effect, the law of cause and effect, which we've done in a previous video. And I also want you to, like I said, understand that wealth is not, it can never be fair. Stop trying to expect it to be fair, because every time you spend your time spending other people's money or arguing and bemoaning or complaining that other people got more money, you're taking your attention away from your own life. You're stopping yourself from creating more money or finding ways to make money, because you're spending too much time moaning and groaning about other people, about their wealth and what they are doing or not doing. Okay? So if you want to do that, then that's fine. If that's what you want to do, if you want to go on your protest marches, or if you just want to sit at home and lament your problems, or you want to moan at people at work that wealthy people have got more money, then that's your choice. But the truth of the matter is that lots of wealthy people got their money because they've created systems, they've done stuff, they've even sought information from other people, they've modelled themselves on other people, they've seen what other people have done, they've copied them. Not everybody is completely successful, but lots of people have lots of failings and then they still go on, but they keep at it. There's a big difference and they are rewarded for what they do. So to suddenly expect them to hand over all their money to help out other people is just completely wrong. And the fact is they do pay more money if they are paying on an income tax rate or whatever. If they are hiding their money and squirreling, then yes, you can argue that they're not paying their amount. But here's the other thing. What always makes me laugh, and that is, it's very easy to say, I pay my tax, they don't. There are different taxes. The word tax has become now just a word meaning tax, but it's different taxes. Corporation tax is different to income tax. A wealthy person who owns a company can pay little corporation tax, but he could probably pay in a fortune in income tax. You don't know that. Just because you're saying, I pay my tax, they don't, doesn't mean the owner isn't paying a load of tax himself. Corporation tax is different to income tax. And then you've got inheritance tax. We've got tax on all sorts of things. There's different taxes. But here's the thing. Income tax would not exist without a person doing something. Simple as that. So a wealthy person who creates a business that employs... So let's say you've got a town where there's like high unemployment. Someone comes along and sets up a factory, employs 5,000 people. Those 5,000 people are then taking home a home wage. That factory is then buying metal from a company just up the road. That company employs more people. there is a huge knock-on effect to society from the actions of that one person. So in many ways, you could argue that they should be allowed a tax break because they've actually benefited the whole area, the whole community. This was the argument why, when it was the miner strikes, people were trying to keep the coal mines open, but they were running at a loss. They couldn't find the money. They didn't have the money, especially the steelworks in Scunthorpe. There was marches with people saying that these companies should be given tax breaks. So there was asking for tax breaks to keep the jobs. And yet when companies who are employing lots of people who aren't having problems, suddenly you expect them to pay more tax. I mean, which way do you want it to go? It can't be fair. But a person who sets up a business that's employing 5,000 people, he can make just £1 off one person, but just because he's got 5,000 people working a day, he could probably end up making £5,000 a week just because there's £1 filtering through to them. That's the decision that they made. So, to suddenly expect wealthy people to start paying more tax is just wrong, because they benefit society so much. And again, like I said, money is just a tool. It's just how it is set up. There's nothing stopping you from doing exactly the same thing. So I'm going to bring this video to a close now. It's been a bit of a long one. It probably sounds a little bit preachy. It might have pushed some of you people close to the edge of moaning and groaning about me, or you might think I'm a bit of a knob, which is understandable. And I am, believe it or not, a socialist. I do believe in putting money into society as opposed to spending it on weapons. I just also believe that people have the right to earn money and shouldn't be forcibly paying it. Because, like I said, the word tax, people just assume it's one thing. But without actually setting up a business, without doing anything, there's no tax to pay. So the other argument again is, if you want a wealthy person to pay tax, I've often thought about this. A wealthy person you think should pay tax could turn around and say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop now. So imagine Amazon. You want Amazon to pay more tax. What if Amazon suddenly said, right, okay, that's it, we'll leave the country. All those jobs will be lost. All those knock-on effects, the people who sell books, the people who get the cardboard boxes, everything, the drivers, there'll be so much job devastation if Amazon left. And as I mentioned with Scunthorpe Steelworks, people went down to London to march. They'll be saying, give them tax break. There'll be people having strikes. There'll be people marching in the streets trying to say it's wrong that Amazon should leave, cut all these jobs. You don't care about the people and this and the other. But you can't have tax without doing something. So the big tax bill that Amazon have supposedly not paid, or these other people haven't paid, has come about by that. It's not like they're robbing the money from us. It never wasn't there in the first place. It never was there in the first place. You can't have tax money without doing something. So whenever the government, or when you hear the radio saying that some wealthy person has now been, he's got to pay tax back for tax dodging, he's like, he hasn't had to pay anything back. It was never there. In fact, he never took it. It's not like he's been claiming incapacity benefit and having a job at the same time. He's not been taking money out of the system. It was never there in the first place until they created it. Tax doesn't exist until you actually do something, or income tax, corporation tax doesn't exist until you actually do something. So to suddenly tell a wealthy person he's got to hand over his money back to society because he's not paying his fair share, he's paying more than his fair share. Without his efforts, there wouldn't be any tax in the first place. So even if a wealthy person paid $5,000, and he should have paid $10,000, even if he paid $5,000, he's actually paying more than if he hadn't done anything in the first place. So I am a socialist and a capitalist at the same time. A capitalist with compassion. I don't necessarily think it's right humans hold on to and squander millions of pounds. If they can't, billions of pounds, if they can't spend it, what's the point? But then you look at Bill Gates and people like that, they're now actually using their money on technologies to better the environment. I know some people, conspiracy theorists, like to think he's doing his vaccine to kill us all off. But he's just talked about spending 406 million or something in the UK on greener technology, bettering for the environment. Tried to get rid of the malaria disease to stop people dying. So these people are spending their money on bettering the environment. If you took it all on tax, it would have probably been spent on weapons in the USA or Britain. They'd have probably spent it on nuclear weapons, planes and bombs. So the decision here is, it's not wealth that's the problem. It's not money that is the issue. It is people. Wealth is never fair. It will never be fair. There'll always be people who have more money, and you can actually put yourself in a position to make more money. Dr. Dre and other people have done it. J.K. Rowling, unemployed mother on benefits with a young child. Suddenly now she nearly hit $1 billion, or she was a billionaire, she gave so much away. These people have done it. So instead of sitting down and moaning about other people who've got lots of money not paying their fair share, maybe you should focus on your own money and your own life and change it for the better. And again, this is not a rant at you, or I don't want you to suddenly think I'm being a bit of a preachy knob, but the truth is, you spend your time focusing on other people's money and what's not fair, or where that wealth should be fair. It's detrimental to your life, not theirs, detrimental to yours. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been a bit long, and I'll speak to you again in another one. Like I said, if you want a copy of the Life Bible, you can get yourself over to the website. There is the link below. Sign up for that. You only pay postage. We'll send it to anywhere in the world, and I'll speak to you again soon in another video. Thanks very much, and goodbye.